Strap on your seatbelts because I'm going to take a look at an actual good game for a change. Now, I firmly believe that the PlayStation has one of the greatest collection of RPGs on any console. Just counting Squaresoft, you have Final Fantasy 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, Final Fantasy Tactics, Saga Frontier 2, Parasite Eve, Chrono Cross, and that's without even getting into awesome games from other developers like Jade Cocoon, Brigandine, Wild Arms. The list is just staggering. The PlayStation was to Square and JRPGs what the Dreamcast was to Capcom and fighting games. Upgrade to the PS2 and throw in 2 full libraries of backwards compatibility, and you may have the absolute best system of all time for RPG fans. But as much as I hear about games that garner ridiculous prices on eBay, by the way, the PSN is probably your best friend for playing a lot of these games legally, there's one game that I feel is criminally overlooked when people talk about the best games on the system. Breath of Fire 3. And I really think that's unfortunate. The first 2 Breath of Fire games, while painfully average, were decent enough sellers for the Super NES, and it's not like this game was made by some obscure third-party developer. This is fucking Capcom we're talking about. Yet, nobody ever seems to talk about how unique and creative a lot of the design mechanics are in this game. I suppose it doesn't help that it bears one of the most insultingly generic covers ever for an RPG. Can't you just imagine finding this in a clearance rack at a Big Lots with the name Fantasy Quest or Sword of Legend or something? It doesn't have anything to do with the game other than the fact that swords exist and there's fire in it. Compare this to the previous games which had a recognizable protagonist right in the foreground. Look at this, he's ready to fuck shit up. You can almost hear his battle cry. This looks like something stolen from a teenager's DeviantArt Photoshop account. The tagline doesn't help much either, the classic role-playing game. That's what it said on the first release too, and it's almost a lie. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a time where the false advertising actually makes the product seem less impressive than it really is. The back cover is a bit better, but it still has a few generic parts. Legendary role-playing, powerful magic, such dragon, very legend, wow. You play as Ryu. No, not that Ryu, wrong Capcom game. This Ryu actually has a reason for that name because he's literally a dragon, and the word Ryu means dragon in Japanese.
So instead of calling me dragon in your tongue, you call me dragon in some other tongue.
He's one of the last of his kind.
I am the last one!
Oh, shut up. The game starts with you literally hatching from an egg and then violently burning everyone you meet to ashen cinders. I first played this game in middle school when I was going through my dragon-obsessed phase. A phase which admittedly still has not completely ended. And this was fucking awesome. Before this point, I'd never seen another game where you play as the dragon. Sure, there were plenty of games where you met dragons, and way too many where you kill dragons, and even a good number where you use them as weapons. But other than maybe Wonder Boy 3, Spyro, and Warrior Dragon, which is really just a parody fan game, I still can't think of many games today where you play as the main character, an actual dragon. So you can imagine my disappointment when you spend the majority of the first few chapters in human form. After escaping the caves, you're quickly found by a pair of young hoodlums named Tipo and Ray. They're not criminals per se, just orphans, robbing folks just so they can afford to eat. They bring you on board, and from there it's the story of Ryu's journey as he searches for his purpose in life. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go over the whole game for a couple of reasons. A, because it's a fucking RPG and the story is really long and involved. B, because I don't really want to spoil anything. And C, because the story is not why I love this game. While the story is well structured and dramatic with a number of plot twists that caught me off guard the first time through, the thing that really makes me love Breath of Fire 3 is simply the gameplay. This game takes so many well-established RPG tropes and throws them out the window in order to replace them with something even better. I am simply stunned by how many great ideas this game has. Now, probably the most important aspect of any RPG is the combat system, because you'll be stopping every 20 steps or so in order to do it. So that's as good a place to start as any. I absolutely love how smooth and effortless the transitions are between combat and exploration. In most games, it goes a little something like this. It may not seem that bad, but when you see it every battle, you start to get tired of it. Breath of Fire 3, on the other hand, goes like this. That is absolutely brilliant! My favorite part is the fact that you fight enemies right out in the middle of the dungeon map, so it's almost like you're actually exploring. You don't think of these maps as a scaled down representation of the world, you know, where each block actually represents 10 feet or something. You fight them right out on the field, which gives each battle a unique background and makes it easy to remember where you were going when you finish. You can even fight in all 4 cardinal directions, so sometimes you get to see the monsters or party from the front, and sometimes you see them from the back. The combat itself is your standard turn-based fare, but it still manages to get in some really nice ideas. The first time you encounter an enemy, you can't see their health bar, but after you kill them, you have a sense of how much damage they can take. And I mean you as a player. If you're taking things seriously, you're doing the math in your head, so you know generally how much you need to hit an enemy before they die. The game actually takes this into account, and every subsequent encounter you have will show a health bar. There's no numbers, but you can see the percentage of their health remaining. It's minor, but it's just one of those things that you see and go, now that's nice, I wish more games did that. You can also learn special attacks by observing the enemies, kinda like learning blue magic in a Final Fantasy game. You have to make a conscious effort to choose this action, so you have to kinda know what you're doing, but it gives you a reason to seek out certain enemies or return to older areas when you're more powerful. Only specific attacks can be learned, but they can be traded among characters with special items called skill ink. Another way to learn skills is by studying under the various masters scattered around the world map. Each one you train under affects your stat growth for every time you gain a level. So choosing how you want to build up your characters really does add to the replay value, and there's over a dozen different mentors for your party of 6 characters. Now, you may think that Ryu would be my favorite character, being a dragon and all, and once you unlock the Ascension ability to transform at will, he is really cool. But to be honest, his human form starts off as kind of a wimp. I know he's supposed to be a hatchling, but the game is so vague on this topic, you don't know if he's supposed to be 10 years old or 2 years old. Until you get Nina on your team, his attack animation even looks like this, and is he sucking his thumb? But no, believe it or not, my favorite party member in this game is Peko. He's the second to last party member to join you when he starts off at level 1, while all your other characters are probably level 13 at the time. So you might think he's not even worth leveling up, like I did the first time through this game. But believe me, Peko is an absolute powerhouse. He's easily one of the most physically powerful characters in the game, sometimes even stronger than Ryu, and he even learned some curative magic to help heal the party. But best of all, he has a permanent regeneration ability, restoring 5% of his HP every round. Because of this, you almost never need to heal him, unless he's specifically being targeted by enemies. Peko rocks! The artwork is really gorgeous in this game too. Every character has that lovely 2D sprite look that never seemed to go out of style, unlike early Polygon work. I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy VII. Then keep in mind that they had to do it twice for every monster, and all 5 directions for every playable character. For some, like Ryu, they even keep things like his shoulder pauldron consistent whether he's facing right or left, instead of just flipping the sprite. That's a really nice attention to detail. They even move during combat as they breathe or sway around, with unique animations for attacking, guarding, and casting spells, which wasn't totally new, but it wasn't quite the standard yet. This was one of the early adopters of it, and it came out less than a year after Final Fantasy VII. While the sprites are all 2D, the backgrounds are 3D, which leads to a rather unique sprite style that I really enjoy. The camera is locked to a single angle, but you can pan it about 80 degrees in any direction, which does lead to letting you find some secret items and treasures if you're diligent enough to search for them. You can also find treasures by using your field abilities. Ryu can slash a sword and steal Zenny from NPCs, as well as cut down shrubs. Teepo can kick trees and rocks, and Rei can pick locked doors. Later on, you get characters like Nina, who uses her magic wand to activate various crystals, and Momo, who seriously uses a freaking rocket launcher. Grinding is sort of a necessity in any RPG, and Breath of Fire 3 manages to make that effortless and even a little enjoyable. When you're wandering around the world map, an exclamation mark will occasionally appear, allowing you to enter a small area of the map with random encounters. This is entirely optional, of course, you don't ever need to enter one of these areas, but if you do, you're rewarded with a random loot drop hidden somewhere on the map. It's usually small stuff like curatives or money, but sometimes you can find rare items that permanently raise your stats. It gives you an incentive to explore and keep fighting monsters, and once you leave, if you want to keep grinding, your very next step takes you to another exclamation mark, so you don't even have to run around randomly searching for another one to appear. But after all that grinding, you're going to eventually be low on HP, so it's off to the inn, right? Well, not necessarily. Anytime you're on the world map, you can choose to set up camp for the evening, which not only lets you rest up for free, but lets you talk to the other members of your party. And there's hundreds of points in the game where your party says different things, so you'll actually want to camp somewhat regularly to get all the different conversations. So what, there's no reason to go to the inn? Well, every time a party member dies in combat, they'll be automatically revived if you win, but as a penalty, their maximum HP will be handicapped by 10%, and that's cumulative each time, so if they have a habit of dying a lot, it can add up fast. The only way to get it back is to rest at an inn. It's minor, but it's just one more little addition that makes the game really easy to play. You don't have to restart just because you ran out of revival items 3 floors deep in the dungeon and lost your healer. You'll have a health penalty, but at least it's better than being down a whole party member. The game is filled with all kinds of little attentions to detail that you wouldn't notice if they left it out, but they put them in, and that really makes a difference. One of my favorites is that every time you use a magic spell, the character actually says different words to cast them. Again, this was a completely unnecessary addition, but it shows that they really did care about making a very fun and polished RPG experience. This feels like a game that was made by people who really love RPGs, and wanted to do their best to remove all the little niggling annoyances that don't ruin a game, but stop it from being as much fun as it could. If the mood strikes you, you could even play this with one hand. Oh, get your mind out of the gutter. I mean, if you're just level grinding or lying down or something and you don't want to cross your hands over. The L2 and R2 buttons can both be used to confirm actions. Again, if they left this out, you wouldn't have missed it, but because it's there, it's just one more minor idea that makes the game a joy to play. And what RPG experience would be complete without side quests and minigames? And this is another place where Breath of Fire 3 really shines. Fairly early in the game, you gain access to the fishing minigame, which is by far the most complex and fun fishing game I have ever seen in an RPG. Yes, even more than Ocarina of Time. It's not just a matter of choosing your bait and seeing what you happen to randomly fish up, like in games like World of Warcraft, Pokemon, or Elder Scrolls, but there's an entire subset of equipment to choose from and a very engaging and occasionally heart-pounding minigame to master in order to catch rare fish. This is actually a really good way to get money and curative items, and the only way in the early part of the game to find AP restoration items like Rainbow Trout. There's some that can be used like combat items like the octopus that blinds your opponent. You can even catch Manillo, a traveling fish salesman that'll trade rare equipment and items for fish. I used to spend hours just playing this minigame and catching dozens of fish just to trade them to Manillo for really kick-ass equipment. I'd imagine with enough patience, you wouldn't ever even need to visit an item shop. There's other side quests too, one of the most lucrative of which involving a group of fairies that you help by donating money and assigning them different jobs as their city grows and develops. It's almost like playing SimCity, but you actually get to enjoy the fruits of your labor as eventually they start to have some really exotic and powerful equipment available in the shops. Stuff that can't be found anywhere else in the game. You can also have them run casinos, fortune tellers, even gift shops for free items. Now, of course, no game is flawless, and Breath of Fire 3 is no exception. Even with as much care as went into the game, there are a few issues that bugged me, but none of them are exactly game breakers. First of all, without a guide, you're going to be completely lost your first time through when it comes to studying under masters. It's not like you'll make a wrong decision, but you really have no idea what kind of skills they're capable of teaching you unless you've played it before. Certain masters like Durandal teach you skills that are completely useless. Now, I don't mean skills that are of such low level that they're not worth casting, although those exist too. I mean skills that are literally useless. Skills with descriptions like, take a practice swing. That means your character does absolutely nothing but slash the air with his weapon. Why the fuck would I ever cast this, just to waste a turn? Also, some people might be put off by the seeming lack of any definite objective during the first 20 or so hours of gameplay. There's a lot of seemingly needless sidetracking missions where you need to do favors for people in town before they let you continue on the plot railroad. Perhaps the most infamous of which involves trading this weak piece of crap Bade so we can defeat the local bully Zig and get the girl. This is the point in the game where you actually regret grinding all your characters to a high level because you'll be killing him in one shot, making training him an exercise in patience rather than strategy. Probably the biggest problem with the plot is that Ryu himself isn't a very proactive protagonist. He's just reacting to things happening around him, and we're forced to go along for the ride. It's not until about 10 hours in that you actually have an objective, which is merely continue to the east. You don't even find out why until you actually get there. Some people might be put off by this, so if you're looking for a game with a meatier story, this may not be for you, but I don't mind it. I find Ryu to be a tragic hero, confused and frightened, but also curious and hopeful for where his future might take him. And it's the side characters like Momo, Peko, and Rei that really make this story worth seeing through to the end. Breath of Fire 3 deserves a spot in the pantheon of great PlayStation RPGs, right next to the Final Fantasy and Persona series. It has a well-told story with great, colorful animation, likable characters, decent replay value, and a lot of really simple but smart design choices that just make it a joy to play. There's nothing lazy about this, and I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, as of this video, it's still not available on the PlayStation Network due to legal reasons, and the most recent re-release is on the PSP, making it somewhat rare, but not impossible to find. At the very least, it'll be better than that piece of shit mobile city building game Breath of Fire 6. If you can get your hands on a copy, be sure to pick it up. Breath of Fire 3 is a game for the PlayStation era that is really sorely overlooked, and I hope I've done my small part in bringing this quiet masterpiece to your attention. Have fun, and happy gaming. there's one game that I feel is criminally overlooked when people talk about the best games on the system. Breath of Fire 3. There's a lot of glare. Right there.